Hi, I'm Sharon, and in today's Read and Reflect, we're going to be thinking about a couple of verses from 1 John, verses 16 and 17. But because that's jumping into the middle of a chapter, I want to give you a little bit of background before we get to those verses. What we find in John chapter 1 is that Jesus always was. He created everything. He gave life to everything that exists, and He is the light who came into the darkness. This is what we learn in the early parts of chapter 1 of John. And then we hear that He came into the very world that He created, but the world didn't recognize Him. Even His own people rejected Him. But to all who believed Him and accepted Him, He gave the right to become children of God. And because of that, we who follow Jesus are reborn into a new life. So that brings us to verses 16 and 17, our focus for today. From Jesus' abundance, we have all received one gracious blessing after another. For the law was given through Moses, but God's unfailing love and faithfulness came through Jesus Christ. So as I read these two verses, a few thoughts and phrases jump out at me that I'd like us to think about. Verse 16 says, from Jesus' abundance. So He is God. He has the power to create everything. He is life. He is light. And an abundance is not meager resources, not just enough. No, it's out of abundance, out of plenty, out of wealth, out of richness, out of more than enough. Out of all of that, we have received one gracious blessing after another. Now, when this was originally written, the words were, we have received grace upon grace. Goodness heaped on goodness. Blessing, and then even more blessing. More than enough, and then even more. It reminds me of a song that I learned very early in following Jesus. And the words of it just say this. I want to share it with you. It says, He gives more grace when the burdens grow greater. He sends more strength when the labors increase. To added affliction, He adds His mercy. To multiplied trials, His multiplied peace. His love has no limit. His grace has no measure. His power has no boundary known unto men. For out of His infinite riches in Jesus, He gives and He gives and He gives again. And then the song goes on to say, when we have exhausted our store of endurance, when our strength is failed and the day is only half done, when we've reached the end of our hoarded resources, our Father's full giving is only begun. This so beautifully speaks of God's abundance. And then verse 17 says, for the law was given through Moses, but God's unfailing love and faithfulness came through Jesus Christ. I think about unfailing love. It's part of God's more. He will not give up on you or me. He will not stop loving us no matter what. God's love never fails. And faithfulness, think about that word and synonyms to that word: commitment, dependability, faithfulness, trustworthiness, steadfastness. We can know all of these things as a reality in our lives as we follow Jesus. God's been speaking to me lately about gratitude and thankfulness. And he's been reminding me to turn my request prayers into thank you prayers. And so when I reflect on the abundance of grace and then more grace, how God has lavished on us, on me and on you, his goodness, especially grace, and then grace upon more grace, it's that undeserved favor of God that actually makes it possible for us to live in relationship to him, that I can actually be called his child, that I can be adopted into his family and welcomed at his table. When I think about that, how can I be anything but grateful? And when I stop to think about God's unfailing love and faithfulness, well, I'm blown away by that, because I don't deserve any of this. And my heart is filled with gratitude. And I say with the psalmist, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His faithful love endures forever. I encourage you to make some space to sit with God and allow your mind to try to wrap around the abundance of physical and spiritual blessings that you have received from God. Try to imagine God's love for you. Well, honestly, it's beyond understanding. But I believe that if you do this, your heart will overflow with thankfulness to God. And let this lead you to worship God and express your love and gratitude in praise to the Lord. Give thanks and celebrate his great love and grace that is available to you. Give thanks.